Well, it's very, very good to be able to welcome you here to St Peter Mancroft Church in the heart of Norwich. My name's Edward Carter. I'm the vicar here at the church. Welcome to all of you here in the building itself, but also to any joining us on the live stream. We have one of these Wednesday reflections every week throughout the year, but at the moment we're in a series for this season of Lent, and it connects to our Lent study group. So this is the second of the series of 5, and following this reflection, for those of us here, there'll be a chance to come down to the Octagon to have a discussion group, which will be led by my colleague Fiona Howarth. And the theme of our discussion groups this year is Christian nationalism, and we're using a booklet with the title "Flying the Flag for Jesus" with a question mark at the end. It's not a statement, it's a question. And this week is quite a difficult subject in a way. It connects to using the cross of Christ as a weapon of war. And I wanted to show you a book that I loved as a child. I'm a tiny bit embarrassed to show you in a way, because it is a children's book, and what's more, it's called Night Crusader. You might just be able to see it there. And I loved this book when I was a boy. Should I be embarrassed about that? Maybe. You can tell me afterwards. But I did love it. And it's a book of fiction. It's a story, but it's based entirely on history. And as the title suggests, Night Crusader, it's based on the story of the Crusades, which were fought, I suppose more than 800 years ago now, in the Middle East. And this particular book connects to events in the late 12th century in what we often call the Holy Land. And at the heart of the story is a young knight called Philip, Sir Philip eventually he becomes, and he's caught up in war. He's caught up in war. And the Crusader army, of course, that he was part of, wore the sign of the cross on their battle equipment, on their shields, on their banners. They literally carried the cross as they swept into battle. And they even carried a piece of what they believed to be the true cross of Christ, a piece of wood from the cross of Calvary. They carried it with them into battle. And they cried out as crusaders. There's a lovely point in the book where it describes them sweeping into battle against the enemy. And they cried out, Deus vult, which is Latin, and it means God wills it. This is God's will, Deus vult. You must picture me as a boy, and I was thrilled by this, the thought of sweeping into battle to fight for God. But as the book unfolds, and it follows history closely, the Crusaders, and in the story, Philip, they were defeated. The battle was lost. They were crushed by the armies of Saladin, the enemy. And Philip was nearly killed, but didn't die in the battle. But he was caught up in the defeat, and he was taken captive, and he was cared for, taken in and cared for by a family from the enemy side. And in fact, it was a member of the Muslim community from the Middle East, and he'd met someone at a very similar age to him earlier in the story when there wasn't actually a time of war. And that friendship was renewed, and he was taken into this family and cared for by them, but also served them. And that friendship is a part of the story as well. And so even as a boy, I realised that in a way, the bigger story that this book represented and represents was not actually fighting God's battles with the cross in hand, hammering people literally to death with the cross of Christ. But perhaps the bigger story was about a common human empathy a sort of common humanity in a complex world. On the 16th of September 2001, President George W. Bush, which was directly following the 9/11 attacks in America, he in effect launched a war in a speech, some comments that he made just a few days after those attacks. And he specifically referred to it as a crusade. He said, this crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while, is how he put it. He was a bit folksy, really, in how he spoke. But he started his comments saying, this crusade. And he was quickly picked up on this and corrected. He was told, no, you mustn't use that word, crusade, for the practical reason that they needed lots of non-Christian allies in the Middle East. And this wasn't a war in the name of Christ at all. And in fact, most people didn't want to see it as a religious war. But the truth was that religion was woven into the situation. And I think most of us would agree that the 25 years since 2001, it's now 25 years ago, most of those years have seen a gradual growth in the phenomenon of faith and God being used as a basis for war on many occasions. And just last week, on Tuesday the 24th of February, so just over a week ago, as part of his State of the Union address, the President of the United States of America said these words: "When God needs a nation to work his miracles, he knows exactly who to ask." He was making a bold claim on the part of God and on the part of the USA. But he said those words. They're on public record. And what's more, Christians and the church pray often that the whole earth will come under the rule of Christ, Christ the King, the just and gentle rule of Christ the King, a picture of the whole of creation gathered somehow with God, perhaps at a great table, a feast with God, but with Christ as the King. And so I suppose the question today for us in the Lent group is, can the human urge to fight ever be aligned with this great hope and longing that all things will come together with God and with Christ? Can that human urge to battle and to fight ever be part of that? If yes, then how? And if no, then why not? Two questions to leave hanging in the air. Well, thank you for listening to my few introductory thoughts, short reflection as we start today. There will be another reflection next Wednesday as our Lent course continues, and it'd be lovely to see you again for that. Thank you for joining us online if you're watching the live stream. But for those of you who are in the church here today, and if you're coming to join the group discussion, now's the moment when we can move down to the octagon. There's coffee awaits and the room awaits. So see you in a moment downstairs. Thank you.